All right, this seems to be a very interesting podcast. We're going to be going over a lot of topics, including what we think is the enclosure of slaves when dealing with meat eating in today's society, meaning people are attacking the slaves and trying to injure the slaves when dealing with meat eating. Let's take a look at that. Furthermore, of interest is if we are working today, the slaves are in Southern California, that we are supposed to pull up on a stage which resembles the times after Moses. And the times after Moses deals with Rechab, when they blew in the ram's horn. It was right after Moses when Ephraim, West Africa, Joshua pulls up, who was a slave, blew in the ram's horn, and these buildings collapsed. Rechab, double-wide, is then a fish and is one of the females who is at the second story. And as the walls of the city fell, they came and encamped in that city. And let's not forget about the times of the 1950s and 60s that the non-meat eating African and the meat eating African pretty much were described together on video, and how awkward it was to see these two together in the 19th. Our reputation is that the blacks today had in their mind and their heart to burn everything down and take 80% of the meat eating industry with them. Veggie nuggets today from McDonald's seem to be excluded from West African menus. But as we look in South America, the back of the Naps, the mountains that we have back there now are taller than every mountain they have in East Africa. That is a very Christian secular state in East Africa, including veganism. And it seems that our back in Naps West African slopes have a plethora of taller mountains than what they have in East Africa, including Kenya, Tanzania. As we went south from there, we saw that the mountains inclined more. We think this is still going to keep our family together. Okay. And it seems the implications are that when visiting the North Pole and trying to get these notes today, that Rechab, double-wide, and fish are given to Ephraim in the Bible right after Moses. And that when you see those red and green aurora lights, what they're going to do is they're going to whiz by, and they're really electromagnetics, which makes the body twitch. And you're going to arch your back up. And if you're Rechab, double-wide, and fish, you're going to arch your back up, and you're going to look down from the North Pole, and you're going to see small. Okay, and how small is small? So if you're thinking mixed people from Ephraim, West Africa, are not mentioned by David, they are. Ethiopians, which are the mixed people by Ethiopia, are mentioned by David. And West Africans are actually mentioned by David. So when you go to the North Pole in the Alaskan area, you look down, you're going to see small. What a lot of people don't know about the Rechab story is that when you see those red and green aurora lights, they're electromagnetics. And when they whiz by, you can feel them. And so you end up twitching, you end up arching your back up. We're going to look down and see small right now with the double-wide and fish as she arches her back up. We're going to look towards the agenda of being with David, our West African people, and known about from before, from the beginning of time. But as we look towards West African slaves, we recognize that the North Pole has 24 hours of night, and everything still looks small. It just looks super duper small. Well, West Africa did not know that Egypt existed. So what we want to do is check out, did the West Africans know that slavery existed in Egypt? Suspectfully, no. Do we look down and see small over here when dealing with the slaves, seeing that West Africa, back at the Naps, seems to be a darker realm and happens to look like it matches our American North Pole, very black 24 hours of night? So in a sense, how small could the slave event be? And when we got to this option, we wanted to recognize back in the day, ever since they were calling people pigs, the Black Panthers and people like that, that the Bible thus far for African people showed immediately that Moses rejected the pigs. So why did they have pigs, in places like your homeless shelter in the 1960s, in your average churches? Therefore, we think the reflection of our realistic black society, which would have taken 80% of the McDonald's out, if that's an issue, was the reflection of what they were seeing in the Bible. And so they called people pigs in their anger towards them. We don't want to forget that part, because if we get the option today for any looking small event, how small can a slave event look? From the North Pole, you would say Atlanta, Georgia looks so far away, it looks so small. Or even the Caribbean islands look even further than that. that we would take that option today, the American slave people, and still expand off that idea. Quite frankly, with the tallest mountains back in the naps taller than Kenya's mountain, that 80% of the slaves who tore everything up and left, a small bit, but they didn't take everything, but they took most of the stuff, more than half, became veggie eaters on their own. And let's point this out real fast, step by step by step, stratus. They became veggie eaters. And so what's interesting about that connection is that we're losing our connection at our step by step by step by step stages that we're getting as slaves in our pyramid-like original ideas. Okay, let's go down the coastline. Sarai is going to mean seashore, and we have Turtle Turn in Michigan's flag, and we have 4 live volcanoes, and ash from the volcanoes are going up and it's coming down. And our black people want to go around the O, which is Oakland, on the one-line mountain. And yet we feel that the ash disappears in Southern California, giving us 1 out of 4 full Montes. And this is in the days of slavery, when we are required to at least present ourselves with booty in the rear towards the patrons of the house, which are white. Looking that up would be after Moses Balaam and Block's prophecies. Japhet is the North Pole, and the slaves shall be in the North Pole. Okay, going down this coastline and saying, and considering the fact that the ash goes up from the 4 lava volcanoes from Turtle Turn, Michigan, and the ash goes up, it comes down, and then wants to disappear in Southern California, giving us 1 full Monte. That's back to Africa. That this area is supposed to be quadruple lapped by the Arabic Hindu population in Oakland to LA, which just started arriving before in the 1960s during the years of Gandhi, who made several trips from India to America. What we're thinking is very easy. As the Arabs are getting away with their dragon hunt and their accessibility to ports, cargo ships off the West Coast, the new California becomes Arabic Hindu. Mind you, the slaves have plenty of stuff, including long-footed cows, Book of Ezekiel, and Ezekiel is a slave, and you can find these along the coastlines of famous cities and ports in California, long-footed cow. But they are still taking our stuff. But pay attention to something very interesting. As we go south to slaves, and we're suspectfully doing a few deeds today, and we're suspectfully, black people, and we're letting them know that we're leaving or black in certain areas, that we're going down the coastline and we are trying to do a full Monty while Arabs are taking everything over. Well, pay attention to this. We go south side by side with them and reach New Mexico's West Africa back at the Naps, where from New Mexico you can see Florida, and Florida is represented as Japanese. Therefore, Rakab, double white, and fish, after Moses, when they blew in the ram's horns and the place came tumbling down, is none other than Florida for Japan, which is the book of Revelation, which is where John, which means South Europe, whereas white has red at the bottom of his hymn, and you see cataclysmic events, places surrounded by water, so that the boat farers said to themselves, will there ever be a place like this ever again? A lot of people can picture Florida or Manhattan, but John, either way, represents South Europe. Okay, so we go for Florida for Japan, which is represented as Japan, Rakab, double white, and fish, but we don't succeed. She then falls into our arms, which is West Africa, Joshua, right after Moses, and she collapses into our arms from a rivalry for Florida for Japan, but it doesn't work. And so she falls into our arms in New Mexico. Is there anything else to say about that except for the Rakab, double white, and fish story could actually exist? Let's go down the coastline again, and I'm thinking over 1 million Hindus to Arabs exist in California. We just left California, and yet the slaves themselves want to go around the O, Oakland. However, I'm suspecting that we want to target Southern California the most as a sunshiny state. If we're departing today, that's a full month. And for the Northeast, slim section, a pale and hungry people. Therefore, sunny and pale switch around. From Russia to California is pale to sunny, and from Western Europe to New England states is sunny to pale. And you guys know black people. What's so famous about this story is the capabilities of the Chinese girl falling in love with a Hindu personality type within an Arabic Shabazz tent, where the Chinese girl falls deeply in love with a poetic Hindu. These days, we think it's going to be with our own people who are slaves in the mix. And let me give you an example. As we're heading south, following the people of LA who are taking over, they'd be the last thing left with black. If our Africans were working today, and it's Arabic and Hindu people who are willing to eat all the corn, nor do they care about our slaves people, is that we'd be right next to them, going south, right next to them, ending up in New Mexico, on the same lattice as LA, Los Angeles, and yet Rakab the White and Fish is supposed to fall into our arms at Florida for Japan, and yet we don't get Florida for Japan. Our interesting story is that the Chinese went land north, south water to get here. China over there has roads, but both sections of China over here, which went land north and south water to get here, which represent the Amazon and the North Pole, have no roads, nor do they want any road. Therefore, our entire pitch in our poem to the Chinese girl who falls in love within an Arabic tent and desert-like tent Shabazz canopy is that she falls deeply in love with the idea of roads and no roads, which she represents herself and her own family. Therefore, what we're looking at when going side by side with the people down in California, if departing and the Arabs take over and overlap, is that they will not actually be able to see us, nor will they be able to find us when we get away with no roads in the Bible at that. Therefore, our script thus far is all biblically oriented and already has a portion of a play-like environment. But not only does Rakab, double-whited fish, when Moses, or actually Joshua, right after Moses, West Africa representing, blows on a ram's horn, the place comes tumbling down, but she falls into our arms. Not only does she fall into our arms, but her fat, ugly sister, who happens to be black, happens to take up the southern hemisphere of China, would be black, and Japan's fat, ugly sister falls into the arms of white, which happens to be an Australian banknote, has a Sheba boat with long hair, which bumps up to the dock and then dangles. And yet, if joined together in the days of slaves, in the days of Ephraim, West Africa, both parties would be anti-Hindu and anti-Arabic. I mean, let's be real and let's get this understood. The more visible they become, the more invisible we are. But the stage is set, and it's set thus far for any Rakab double-whited fish that you see that's in combination with West Africa, which is what you're getting from Florida to New Mexico. That's what you're getting in Washington State. And behold, hold these two people in my hand, and you'll see a huge hand in Washington State. And those two people are Ephraim, West Africa, and Judah. Hold both Ephraim and Judah in my hand. Draw on a thin stick, but there's more on that at a later date. Piece by piece, the Assyrians, thus far, which can mean slaves, or if they go eastward, ash means fire. Asia is from the root word of some kind of ash form in Hebrew. But the Assyrians both build, quote unquote, roads and also take down roads. The two parts of China that we have over here, that they have roads in mainland China over there, but all the Chinese people over here don't want roads. Therefore, the poetry that Rakab, double-whited fish would fall in love with a Hindu variation over here, which is 12 time zones from their Saudi Arabia to our Texas, is very simple. They simply have two parts, roads and no roads, and she falls deeply in love with no roads, no access, no way to get there. Furthermore, it's up to the Africans to accept the fact that the back of the Naps, New Mexico, is never going to be inhabited. Right now, instead we're going to go for white. We're going to look at the seven-shaped Rio Grande and claim that black people on top of the seven-shape both matches the West African shape and the seven at the same time. And we're going to go for the seven and try and get black people to bless from the top of that seven, looking down at something we won't be touching today, which is back in Naps, New Mexico, but we're going to be looking down from the seven north of there, Rio Grande starter. We're going to try and bless the skinny people of America in a sense like Simba goes to the top of the mountain, looks down upon the whole land, and blesses the half times half skinny zone of Miriam's, which landed right over here in Texas, instead of touching anything. And yet, what we're trying to say is that this place would never be touched, it would never be found, because we would have no roads getting there, and our American people would be retransplanted into this area and would follow Los Angeles. In a sense, we would be going south from Oakland to LA, trying to display our Hagar and Sarai material today in which we're supposed to leave a land not our own. However, one step over going south with them, we would get to this New Mexico back to the Naps. where we want black people at the top 7 to look down like Simba and bless skinny people from America at the half times half 12 time zones from Saudi Arabia to Texas as an honorable event. Yet the Arabs of Los Angeles would be very visible. They would be like us, and we would be invisible. We would be more like them in a very hidden shelter. Not only that, but our mixed people who are first generation mixed from America would also not be able to be touched or found. Not only that, but the people with no roads right now are as if white were in Africa and you couldn't find white today, and they're in the middle of the Garden of Eden. Clothes, don't mix those. Things which grow, which are called seeds, those were in the middle of things, not to mention one more thing, leading to the middle of the Garden of Eden. Rakab double white and fish, Florida for Japan, was always a non-mixing, full Japanese story, which we were going to go for, but we don't think we're going to make it. And so we still think she will fall into our arms as the story of Rakab double white continues, and Ephraim West Africa is just there. She falls into our arms. No, other people are not invited. So what are you saying? I'm saying only American people are invited for this show. Another bogus story. Peru is in the shape of a whale. We think it's a bogus story with Brazil in the shape of a hippopotamus, Venezuela in the shape of a two-faced mask with a gorilla in the Bahamas and an axe in her head going north to south, which is the disposition of the slaves in Jeremiah 19 through 30. But a whale which does not fit any of the rivers that we have for Peru, there's no real reason for that thing to be there. And yet Brazil gives us a hippopotamus, which resembles Kenya. With what we have, that thing doesn't exist. And in the Bible, Isaiah 6, 7, and 8, the black and white fish is robbed. Damascus means fish. Samaria means black and white, if put together the right way. And Assyria means slaves. As we look, the slaves were supposed to go from north to south, as we mentioned before, Jeremiah 19 through 30, and end up in the middle of South America. Both small people on your west end, which are the Peruvian llamas, and a large amount of Chinese, and a large amount of mixed people on our east end, which are the Brazilians and the Guyanese, Hindu and Portuguese, or Mediterranean and Hindu. The slaves go right down the middle of both of these people, but the black and white fish of Isaiah 6, 7, and 8 is supposed to be robbed. We're going to keep our eye on that. Let's jump on over to Bermuda. We have no McDonald's, and we don't mix at the same time. For our American mixed people, the little brilliant Hindu guy will steal all this mature stuff and all this mature controversy. They'll steal it for themselves, and yet we want it for ourselves. Furthermore, in the Bible, they both mix and allow for non-mixing on all parts, including Florida for Japan, so it's not just us. And you will see that many mixed parties will support both people. Thus far, we think we're going to lose the Florida for Japan ticket, but it might fall into our arms in New Mexico. There's so much about Bermuda. Sarai goes to Egypt, and as she went to Egypt, she had to be hidden by her spouse, Abraham. And as they go into Egypt, they are met by princely people who want to wed her and evidently be romantic with her. Remember, mature Hindus would steal this much, but they can't because we're already there. She then chooses her own child over the slave Ishmael, who is supposed to be a Western slave since Abraham's vision. Therefore, Bermuda the island has two characters, one wanting to mix from head to toe and the other guy rejecting them who is smaller. Mind you, Sarai comes out with the first camels mentioned in the Bible that we can note, and yet the llamas are back in that Peruvian llama. South America, and what is shorter than a camel happens to show up in Bermuda the island. Furthermore, you can see the turtle that you see in Michigan who's turtle turning, and his turtle head is turning in Michigan. You can actually see the rest of his body flying from Bermuda, so you have a flying turtle who, us being American, want to say that it looks as if it has an upgrade potential and it looks like as if it has a downgrade potential. And if America is doing a downgrade today, which is what we're doing, we want Bermuda the island to stay stuck to America and do a downgrade today. And that what we're left with, it's just so ingenious, is that we have no McDonald's and we don't mix. A topic that mature Hindu people would steal from us, we still have. But for our African people, as we introduced ourselves, Sarai chose her own child down the One Line Mountain, and we did Seattle to Oakland, that we did 2.5 years together where we both have gold full and we want you here, or we're leaving and we're black and we don't mix for our pure black people, for our all black people, to meet the family the way the Bible suggests that we should. We are left with mixed people make me clogged up. Mixed people make me dizzy. They don't know what they're talking about. And they actually make me slower. If we were to introduce a very mature topic that the Hindus would steal, we would say, you know what, we don't mix. And if this makes you faster, it's healthier for the animals. This bronze and iron kingdom, whether it is Chinese and white, which you don't think it is, or whether it's Arabic and white, we do think it is, because we don't think white's going to be as fast as he was at doing anything around different mixed people of a black male source, seeing as how some of his heart has been torn in half from his own espousal, which is one of the things in the Bible. How to get over this very rapidly. Yeah, if America does a downgrade, Bermuda the island and his flying turtle, which shows upgrade potential and downgrade potential, we want Bermuda the island to do a downgrade from where we're at, which is about 80% African people, which is good for the protection of Bermuda the island, in which you're going to get into controversies like our long-haired Nazarites who have long hair in the Bible, don't shave your head bald, would have been born in that tall mountain over there in China, would have gone to the North Pole and came down this one-line mountain and represented the way they should have. Yet you'll see that the majority of these people are mixed with Arabic people. And their mixed kids are claiming that these guys are hot on them, meaning they're hot and heavy and knew what they were doing while trying to take them out. And this is our other veggie issue, which is to say that Bermuda the island is an ingenious island against a bronze and iron people that we don't know anything about yet. We don't want them touching Bermuda the island. And we don't think that they should try and take red and white, long-haired Nazarites from the Bible, don't shave your head bald, don't touch blood, don't go near death, born in Tibet, go up the North Pole, come down the one-line mountain, meet headbangers. Yet, how many of these people have already been Arabanized? Almost more than half of them. More than half of their own people who are their original veggie eaters from the Bible have been Arabanized, and then these guys have the gall to go and try and attack other people. We're ingenious. We're nothing like that. Bermuda the island is going to put it on the front toes. We don't mix, and we have no McDonald's. We have no McDonald's, but we don't mix. So you wanted it, now you have it. The only people who have it are the American people. Kenya got us right now, Washington State. Join both Judah and Ephraim, hold them in my hand. Kenya has it. But who has it? Our people, our American. You wanted it, now you have it. The two moves we have, go with them side by side when we go Oakland to LA. And yet we will have the hidden canopy of Shabazz. That's in New Mexico. And Bermuda the island has it. With our new mascot, we have no McDonald's. We're amongst nations of people who have no McDonald's, yet we're the only nation to say we don't mix. When dealing with this controversial topic of today's society, which is the vegan, veggie eating topic, you wanted it. That's our slave news for today. Until next time, this is Willie Chestnut, 1T, not 2. Till next time, over and out. On our next podcast, oh, these are veggie eating bears that we have in Mexico. They're vegans because we've never had any of their cows on our nation before. And furthermore, our nappy cows, when it's sent back with black support, that is real black people representing as nappy cows, all foreign cows and all foreign chickens back into their own home. And the second Passover, not the first Passover in the first month, but the second Passover in the second month, which is given to Ephraim, West Africa, all the things we don't have to do. We thought we had to eat meat, but if you keep reading that second Passover, you'll hear of all the things we have to do, including waiting for very special beings to meet us who can take care of these animals, and they have to be there. Until next time. Woo! We